John Coates is the International Olympic Committee Vice President and the former AOC boss. He joined me a little earlier. I started by asking him how disappointing this news is that Daniel Andrews has cancelled the 2026 Commonwealth Games for the Australian sporting community.
You've nailed it. It's the athletes and the sports that are entitled to be disappointed. The Commonwealth Games has always been a great stepping stone for them leading into the Olympics 2 years later, and we've got so 2 years after 26 we've got Los Angeles, and we've got then Brisbane 2032. Also there are some sports, netball in particular, that doesn't have a multi-sport event, so it's very important to them. They're not on the Olympic program, and of course there'd be athletes who would have already been targeting 26 as their games. Paris may be for many too early. So yes, very disappointing for the athletes.
But also our international standing. I mean, how much damage does this do to Australia when we want to host big sporting events in the future?
Well, it will do damage, has already, I'm sure. Every time Australia wants to put its hand up for an individual event or a multi-sport event, the question will come, well, what about the guarantees? Have you got the state government behind you, and can we rely on those guarantees from state governments? Yes, this is going to be very difficult to overcome for future bids.
How embarrassing do you think this is to us internationally?
It's particularly embarrassing for the Australian people who are part of the Commonwealth Games movement, and it will be for the sports themselves as well. So it's yeah, there's an embarrassment there. There's no doubt about that.
Do you think there's a case for the federal government to have stepped in to try and salvage this bid?
I'd say the fact that Mr. Andrews is not proceeding, he did mention in the cost is the cost of security, and that is not small these days. It traditionally is something that for the Sydney Olympics and for the FIFA World Women's Cup, they are responsibilities that national governments take, and it sounds like the federal government has said, look, we're not going to support you with security. The federal government's got some big commitments, I must say, wearing my Olympic hat, leading into Brisbane. They've committed large amounts for infrastructure and some sports venues in the lead-up period, and there's only so much money, and we've got a country at the moment where cost of living is a problem. We've got a country where there's a shortage of housing, affordable housing, so there's a limit to what a federal government can do, and they've obviously said no.
Look, the Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews today said he'd rather spend money on health and education than the cost blowout, which he put at around $7 billion. But should he have been surprised by this cost blowout? I mean, shouldn't he have anticipated this when he decided to have it in regional Victorian areas rather than in the centre of Melbourne, where the infrastructure already exists?
On the face of it, that's your conclusions appear correct to me, absolutely. Someone, when it's come to budgeting, has let him down terribly.
I mean, there needs to be an investigation into this, doesn't there? I mean, you know, the athletes have been getting up morning and night to train, and not just Australian athletes, but internationally as well. There'll be a lot of broken hearts.
Yeah, there will be, and I think there's already a Senate inquiry into the support for both these games, the 26 and for Brisbane, and so it'll have some more work to do now. They've got it terribly wrong, obviously, and is that because of information given by the Commonwealth Games, or is it because they didn't do a proper due diligence? I don't know, but that's they need to look at that.
It would be a great pity, wouldn't it? I mean, it's kind of founded the careers of the likes of Cathy Freeman, Ian Thorpe. They had their early successes at Commonwealth Games.
Kathy Freeman went to the games in Auckland as a 18 or 17-year-old. I remembered I was involved in having her added to the team, and she was part of a relay that won there, the 4x100. And yes, you're right. There's many other athletes who've first had experience and in many cases have medalled at Commonwealth Games, and that's carried them on. It is a great pity for our athletes. It's been an important pathway for Australia, and that's the reason I think that I hope that they persevere and try and find a more workable solution.
All right, John Coates, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.